Hi, I'm Ryan F. Gassian, and in this video I'm going to talk about Doug Ford's chances of winning the Ontario election. Now, Ontario is scheduled to have an election coming this June. One will decide who's going to be our next premier. Now, one of the candidates is Doug Ford, the new leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. I've already talked about him in previous videos. In this video, I want to talk about the odds of him winning, which I think are high. One of the reasons I believe this is the case is what we have seen around the rest of the world. We've seen a rise of right-wing populist movements. In Britain, we saw Brexit. In the United States, we saw Donald Trump. Now, what's causing this? Well, one of the things is anxiety. The fact is, for the last 30 years, things have gone worse for the average middle-income citizen. That's not to say that there hasn't been progress. In certain parts of the world, we've seen vast improvements. The poverty rate has been slashed considerably. But in the West, we've definitely seen a stagnation in wages, if not a decline. Now, why is that? Well, there are several factors. One is globalization, though it is not as important as people think. Factories are being moved to countries where employees can pay their workers less. But another bigger factor is just automation. Automation has resulted in the elimination of countless jobs. Whether it's because robots are now taking the place of factory workers, or AIs are doing the jobs that used to be done by accountants. This is going to accelerate in the years to come. Truck drivers are going to be replaced by self-driving cars. And we're going to see more white-collar jobs vanish as supercomputers and advanced AI take their place. Immigration is another factor. The fact is that our populations are stagnant. Part of this is natural. As a society becomes more advanced, there's less incentive to have children. Remember, in poorer countries, they had to have more children because most of them wouldn't survive. So if you wanted to have 2 kids reach adulthood, you might have to have 7 children, knowing that 5 of them would die before they become adults. In more advanced countries like Canada, we have fewer kids, partly because we're more preoccupied with other things, whether it's our career or just living our youth. The urge to have children isn't that great, and the time we do have kids, we're going to have fewer. That means we're dependent on immigration to ensure that we have a steady flow of workers who are able to pay into taxes so those who are older can get their pensions. The problem with this is that there is cultural friction. Even in a multicultural society like Canada, cultures do clash. Natural citizens feel that those who are coming in should assimilate to our culture, while those coming in want to maintain some of their cultural identity. Again, this leads to conflict. Maybe not physical conflict, but social strife. And this does create anxiety among those who are more, let's say, conservative. Studies have shown that conservatives are much more prone to fear and anxiety. People like Doug Ford are able to effectively exploit this. One, they often give simple ideas to complex problems. And while this makes it easier for people to digest, their solutions often don't actually fix the problem. But you have to understand that politics is more emotion than it is logic. And people like Doug Ford and Donald Trump are demagogues. So they appeal to people's fear by blaming those who are different. Combined with this economic insecurity is also what people like to call elitism. There's this anti-establishment vote that we're seeing in both the United States, but also in Britain and elsewhere. People feel like they're not being listened to. This is something you'll hear a lot from people on the right or people living in rural areas. They feel like their concerns are not being heard. And they have a lot of contempt for those they consider to be urban elites. And I'm not just talking about corporate elite. They have contempt for pretty much everyone who's living in the urban areas, who they feel are being heard and who are better off than they are. Now that's not always true. We see a lot of poverty in the urban areas. They're not voting so much for Doug Ford, but rather against those who are currently in power. And it doesn't help that the current Premier of Ontario, Kathleen Wynne, is not very popular. Now, I'm not going to get into her controversies for this video. All you need to know is that she's polling very poorly. And this makes it easier for a lot of people to say, maybe we should have some change. The fact that the Liberals have been in power for over a decade is another reason why Doug Ford has a very good chance of winning. And I think it's safe to say that he is the likely candidate to win. Again, I'm not happy about this. I don't think he has the right policies for Ontario. We need to accept that what we've seen in the United States and what we've seen in Britain might very well play out in Ontario. I know a lot of Ontarians will think, well, we're better than the Americans. Please don't make that assumption. We're as human as they are, meaning we have the same biases, the same prejudices, the same failings. So if you do not want to see Doug Ford as your premier, then I suggest that you vote coming this election. Do not take it as a given that he's not going to win. It's when you make those kind of assumptions is when someone like Doug Ford is going to win. Thank you for listening, and please help my channel by liking this video and subscribing. Oh, and visit my website at www.darknessinamerica.com to read my short stories about a future United States where people live in fear of inquisitors, telepathic assassins who police the populace for thought crimes.